Good morning, good afternoon, and good day wherever you may be joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live. Now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IBGR, the world's number one business talk, news, and strategy radio network. Today, we're asking, what is the business risk of cybersecurity? We have a special guest, Terry Ziemniak, to help us with the discussion. A fractional chief information security officer, CISO, with decades of experience guiding organizations across industries like healthcare, finance, and manufacturing, Terry has collaborated with executives and boards to align cybersecurity with business goals. But before we bring Terry on, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we're doing that, why don't you reach out to a friend, ping them, and have them join us? We strive to make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged. All right, with that, Tim.
Rob,
Yes.
this is the first show that is being live streamed to TikTok, I believe.
Yes, it is. We are.
Maybe. Is anybody looking at TikTok? Supposed to be.
Yeah. And all the 20-year-olds are just gobbling up this kind of content.
I know my great niece and great nephew, who are 10 and 13, will be watching it.
Perfect.
Thank you for starting our trend on TikTok.
Anyway, just to say, welcome everybody, and really looking forward to today. Always do on the digital download, and please put forward your questions and comments. Great subject. My name is Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling: Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
Excellent. Thank you. And keeping up the tradition on the digital download. The show before Christmas, we all wear our, as we say in Britain, Christmas jumpers.
Rob says that like he's in Britain.
That's right. That's sweaters for the rest of the world. Bertrand, welcome.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Bertrand Godillot. I am the founder and managing partner of Odysseus & Co., a proud DLA Ignite partner based in France, but actually broadcasting today from Morocco. So quite exciting. I do have the jumper. Not easy to find in France, by the way, but I managed to find one. And I'm very excited by today's topic, of course.
It's funny because ugly sweaters are really easy to find here in the States. Good to have you with us, Bertrand. Tracy.
Good morning, everyone. Tracy Borison from TLB Coaching and Events, also a proud DLA Ignite partner. And this year, when we were bringing out our Christmas stuff, we counted the number of holiday attire pieces that I have, and I have 12. So next time, Bertrand, you just call me. I'll send you one.
I'll do.
Is that one for each of the 12 days of Christmas?
Well, that wasn't intentional, but then when I realized I had 12, then yes, we turned it into a thing.
Awesome. Great to have you with us, Tracy. Thank you. Adam.
Hi, Rob. Hi, everybody. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, Tim's business partner. I'm not a big fan of Christmas, hence the fact that we have no ho-ho on my jumper. It is, however, a Christmas jumper, not sweater, jumper.
I know. When I saw that you weren't wearing your Bah Humbug hat, and I was like, oh. But you have the jumper, so it's good.
The sweater.
The sweater jumper.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that, Adam. And myself, I am Rob Durant. I am founder of Flywheel Results. We help startups scale. And I, too, am a proud DLA Ignite partner. My Christmas sweater says, No business like snow business.
Yeah.
And I hate snow.
You see, that's exactly why I don't like Christmas, Rob.
The snow? Okay.
No, puns.
Oh, snow puns. I'm like,
Let's
I'm
be
in
honest,
Canada.
that's not why you
can't do
hate it.
Christmas without snow.
All right.
Also, before we start, I want to share my Christmas mug because it's Star Wars Christmas.
And it makes great
Oh,
radio.
And go and find us on TikTok, people who are listening on
I'm
this
so
show.
jealous.
All right, we have lost it. Let's try and bring it back.
That's Tracy. That's so brat.
Okay. You know, like I'm the youngest one on this panel and I have no idea about any of the Gen Z lingo. So just FYI.
You probably
is
need
that
more of
good?
that tick and the talk.
Yeah, I'll go watch this on TikTok, I'm sure.
All right. As I said, this week on the Digital Download, we're going to speak with Terry Ziemniak. With decades of experience guiding organizations across industries like healthcare, finance, and manufacturing, Terry has a proven record of building and implementing robust security frameworks and protecting businesses from evolving threats. Let's bring him on. Terry, welcome.
Hi, Terry.
Thank you. Now, first off, I want to apologize. I did not bring my ugly Christmas sweaters. I'm traveling this week, so this is my, I guess, moderately attractive general purpose jumper.
Perfect. You fit right in.
Good.
Terry, let's start by having you tell us a little bit more about you, your background, and what led you to where you are today.
Sure, absolutely, Rob. So I've been in cybersecurity for 20 some years. I like to think that I was cyber before cyber was cool. My career kind of breaks into three big parts. The first part of the career was very technical. So I was doing hands-on bits and bytes sorts of stuff, penetration testing and security architecture, building big, cool solutions. First decade of my career, technology started moving pretty quick back then. So it was about the 2000s. So all the wireless and the crypto and all the cool stuff was popping. Frankly, it was getting hard to keep on top of all this stuff. And at that point, I had a good inflection point in my career working for a consulting company. One of the sales ladies came around and said, "Hey, we have a client asking about HIPAA. What's HIPAA?" And in the US, that's the regulation governing kind of how you protect the medical data. And none of the folks in my security company that I work for knew anything about HIPAA. So I officially raised my hand. I'm like, I don't know, but I'll go figure out what HIPAA is. So went out and printed out the big regulations and read through it, and I became the HIPAA guy. That then led me to the second phase of my career, which was the compliance and eventually the executive part of cybersecurity. So I have a decade of experience as what they call Chief Information Security Officer, large organizations across the US. And then pivoted to the third phase, hopefully not the last phase, but my current phase of my career is working as a fractional CISO. So tying together that executive experience as well as the technical hands-on experience. Now I work for small and mid-sized companies. I kind of help them think through their cybersecurity strategy.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So let's start the conversation with the foundational question. What level of security is secure enough?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and probably the big question most businesses really fail to think through. I kind of came up with that phrase "secure enough." I've been using it for a decade now, because if you consider cybersecurity a risk, you've got to think about you can't really solve risks. You don't close out risks. Just like businesses have to deal with financial risk, competitive risk, regulatory risk, all the risks that businesses have to deal with. You need to be aware of them. You need to manage them. You need to deal with the risks. Cybersecurity is the same way. You're never 100% secure. So I kind of use that phrase as I talk to business leaders, help them think through those concepts of secure enough. Do you want to be Fort Knox? Fort Knox is probably not the right goal. It's not the right goal line for you, because being Fort Knox is really, really expensive. It could most likely be disruptive to your business. Do you want to go bankrupt trying to be bulletproof in the cybersecurity space? Maybe not, but you got to think through it. On the other end of the spectrum, do you want to be irresponsible with cybersecurity? Probably not. So I kind of use those stories to help business owners think about, this is a risk, this is a spectrum we're dealing with. Where do you want to be on the cybersecurity scale? And typically what that means is you need to think through your outside, your influences on the outside, your prospects, your clients, the regulations, cybersecurity, whatever it may be, will help you think through and define that line of what is secure enough for us for today. Unfortunately, it may change tomorrow. But those outside influences will help business owners think through what's that right level of security. And that's usually a good starting point. Because if you don't think about your goal and your objective, you're just buying miscellaneous stuff. You know, a sales guy can come through and sell you the latest, greatest firewall. Maybe you buy a new backup solution, which are all good and may well be necessary. But you got to tie it together and understand where do you need to go. And that's the phrase that I use to facilitate that conversation.
So you talk about cybersecurity, and obviously we all of us have heard about, even if we haven't directly been exposed to, certain things that have happened in the marketplace. So huge data breaches where a credit card company is hacked and then they're selling your details online, or somebody clicks the wrong thing and it download some malware, and then you've got an executable file running, and you can't access any of your data, and it's ransomware, if you like. But what other things are there that people need to be aware of from a cybersecurity perspective? Because those are like, like breaking into Fort Knox in terms of the glamour factor of them. So what are the things that we're likely to encounter on a more day-to-day basis from a cybersecurity perspective?
Yeah. So really what you're asking is kind of what are the typical incidents that are happening? So absolutely, that's for individuals or companies. There's a lot out there. And actually, it's a great question, because if you think about, if you're trying to identify the goal for your business, you probably don't want to address the very unlikely incident that's out there. If China decides they want to target you and break into your business, frankly, you're in a bad spot, and that's difficult to address. However, there's a lot of very common attacks that lead to incidents that happen all the time. Those are the ones you should be focusing on. So the ones you mentioned are real common: ransomware, all sorts of malicious software, what they call malware. So it could be a Trojan horse or a virus. Collectively, that's just a bucket of bad software. And if you get that bad software on your computer, it could encrypt stuff, it could steal stuff, it could snoop on what you're doing on your computer. So you have the general category of malicious software. That's one bucket you have to deal with. There's a lot of phishing sorts of incidents. So that generic email threats are a big problem. So phishing would be, I'm going to send you an email and pretend to be someone you know, someone you trust. And once you interact with that email, that's where the bad stuff happens. So once I get you thinking about the email and interacting, maybe you click on a link, maybe you download a file, maybe you send me information you shouldn't be sending. So those sorts of communication-based attacks are real common. It could be email-based. It's also more and more we're getting text-based. I've got, people get fake messages that pretend to be the boss. You say, hey, we got a problem. I need you to run to go buy, a new credit card or a gift card for someone. So phone-based phishing attacks are very common as well. So those are one general category. Malicious communications. Those are probably the big ones. Aside from that, you still have traditional fraud, which happens. So in the old days, you just physically steal stuff. Now you can use cyber technology to steal stuff. You've got outages you have to worry about. So you could be a denial of service. Maybe ransomware brings you down. It's just there's a litany. And it's kind of hard to think through what are the 1,000 attacks we have to deal with. It's really a matter of I would think the business owners focus more on the general protections. And as we talk today, we can talk through how do you understand what the best protections are and the necessary protections. But unfortunately, there's a lot. There's a lot out there because the bad guys are making money off this. Think about it, who we're dealing with. We're not dealing with kids in the basement trying to break into your computer like you may see on the hacker movies of the 80s and 90s. These are criminal enterprises and businesses. These are people trying to make money. It's purely capitalism at its worst, I guess. But these companies have things like you can do phishing attacks as a service. You can pay someone to do an email attack on your behalf. You can do ransomware as a service. You can pay someone to do a ransomware attack on your behalf. These bad guys even go so far as to have support lines. Hey, your ransomware campaign's not working for you. Give us a call. We'll help you out.
It strikes me that there are two main baskets for this. There's the IT basket. So, you know, as the Chief Information Security Officer, you have to put in place structures, like you said, like the firewall, like antivirus software, like keeping all of that stuff up to date. But there's also the idiot in the room scenario. You know, you send me an email and I click on it. So there's an education element to this as well, isn't there?
Yeah, and actually maybe a little more broadly, Adam, when you talk about cybersecurity protection, you typically talk about people, process, and technology. So the technology side is your firewall and your antivirus. Your people is making sure Terry doesn't click on the wrong link. You know, Terry knows to notify the help desk when I see an odd pop-up on my computer. You know, Adam knows to call the help desk when he loses his laptop, those sorts of things. But also there's a third part, is the process part. So, you know, maybe today we'll talk a little more about business continuity and business resilience. All your compliance and your contractual protections, your cyber insurance are in that space. So there's kind of three big buckets when you think about how do you protect your organization.
Terry, I have a question, because I feel like the more and more we get these like global complex problems, the more and more organizations are interacting between each other. And there's like a role of cybersecurity in keeping your organization secure, and also those communications between organizations secure. But there's more and more communication between organizations that really needs to get done in order to solve problems. And so from your experience, what kind of, and I mean, I'm sure there isn't one right balance. There's like a balance that's right for an individual organization. But I mean, you mentioned prospects, clients, regulations, goals. Like, how do we make sure that we're having a holistic conversation about what really matters?
Well, the holistic part, Tracy, is a great concept, because if you put all your eggs in the technology basket and you buy the world's greatest firewall, that's great. But again, if Bertrand clicks on something you shouldn't click on, you're in trouble. You know, if you have if something gets through and your backups don't work correctly, you got to spread your presumably limited cybersecurity protection budget and your resources. You got to spread it evenly. The way to look through that is there's a great number of high quality frameworks out there. So you may have heard of the NIST CSF frameworks, the popular one in the US. There's ISO equivalents, there's high trust. There's all sorts of frameworks out there. The advantage of the framework, and it's important you find the right one for your business, but these frameworks will make sure you look holistically at your program. So a good framework is better than, you know, hey, we're secure because Terry says we're secure. Probably not a good way to run your business. But if you're secure because Terry aligns you with a well-known broad framework of cybersecurity protections, then you have a good conversation. That's the right place to be. So again, in the US, NIST cybersecurity framework, CSF, real popular, but that'll walk you through governance. You know, do you have leadership support? It'll walk you through your contracts and your training and your backup procedures and your recovery time and your communication. All that's built in there. But a great framework will make sure you have that holistic oversight. And it also add, Tracy, you talked about at the beginning of your question, third-party risk is you're right, is a big issue. So no company's an island anymore. We all buy and we sell from other companies. Back to the Fort Knox analogy, you could get closer to Fort Knox if you decide not to sell or buy anything, but you wouldn't be a very good company. So you have to accept a little bit of cyber risk when you connect with other companies. Third-party risk says, before I buy a service or technology from you, I'm going to make sure that you don't impact my cybersecurity. And maybe for small businesses, they have to turn that conversation around and say, I'm selling my product up to the government, up to the military, to a bank, to a hospital, to even to individuals. Those prospects, those buyers have expectations. So if you're a small business selling out, you've got to ask yourself, what do your prospects expect? That's kind of the reciprocal side of third-party cyber risk, third-party risk, and that really again helps small businesses define what is secure enough.
Right. Awesome.
Terry, what do you say to the organization that thinks they are so small that this really isn't going to impact me? What are the true business risks that a small business might face?
Well, so if you're a real small business and maybe you're making donuts someplace, you may in fact have a very small cyber footprint for your business. But keep in mind, there's kind of two parts. One is you're as a business, you're producing stuff, whether it's donuts or maybe you're making, I don't know, smartphones, whatever. So you got to protect your business, your intellectual property, your processes, your people, all that stuff has to work. If you're really small, maybe that's a really small cyber footprint. Maybe it's big, but you got to think about that. But I'm leading to the second part is don't forget you have business processes as well. So even if your donuts don't have any cyber risk, your bank account, your email account, your HR system, your payroll, there's risks on the business side, the back end processes. So you got to make sure you're paying attention to those as well. Now, typically a small business, you're not running your own payroll. You obviously don't have your own bank, but you have to look at those services and make sure you properly manage that risk. At your bank, are you doing multi-factor authentication? Do you have a backup administrator? Same thing for email. Is your email properly secured? Are you validating your payroll services, whatever it may be? So you got back-end processes, and then you got your kind of business operations. Small business may only have to deal with the back end, but most likely they do have to deal with something.
Terry, I'd like to come back to something you said initially about cost. The discussion we're having today sounds to me very close to discussions we had 15, maybe 20 years ago around availability. Mm-hmm. There was always a big fantasy of 100% availability and a lack of understanding of what this would mean from a cost perspective. It sounds to me like, cybersecurity is a little bit of the same nature, in other words. And I'd like to understand as a business, and I understand also that there might be ranges, but what is the average cost that you should, do you have benchmarks, in other words, of, what is the cost of doing business linked to cybersecurity?
Well, that's the $1 million question. As I mentioned, I've been in corporate America a good part of my career, and it's always, what are the numbers? Should it be? Back when I was in corporate 10 years ago, 3 to 5% of IT spending in cybersecurity, kind of in the healthcare space, what was a working number. It's really hard because some companies consider cybersecurity an IT function, and they will then measure it based on a subset of the IT budget. If you have, I don't know, $1 million IT budget, maybe 5% or 10%. The other complexity with having an IT is there's so much overlap. If you pay someone to manage your laptops, and that person's responsible for encrypting and backing up and patching your laptops, is that a security cost or is that an IT cost? You got a lot of those mixed numbers in that bag. And then also don't forget, beyond IT, there's a lot of non-technical stuff, people, process, technology. Where do the people costs fall? Where do the process costs fall? Unfortunately, there really is no set number. It's like, what's the cost of making sure you're compliant with your HR regulations and your whatever other regulations are out there? It's really difficult to measure. I will tell you in general, most people should be spending more. On the other hand, you don't necessarily need to spend a lot of money in cybersecurity. Adam was asking about what are the things we should be worried about. Ransomware, bad emails, viruses. Those aren't particularly expensive to block these days. If you have a good antivirus tech solutions are not expensive. Cybersecurity training solutions aren't expensive. Your backups aren't particularly expensive. So it's not generally a huge capital outlay to be secure. You got to be thoughtful of how you're spending your money, though. So unfortunately, I don't have a good, easy number for you, but I tell you don't need to spend a huge amount of money, and you got to spend it broadly.
But I think what's interesting is what you're saying is that as a I as CISO,
Yeah.
you run your own budget, and that is across, I suspect, IT processes and people.
Well, it's interesting in my career, Bertrand. I have been a CISO at billion-dollar company where I reported to the CIO. Similar size company I was working where I reported to the chief counsel. So I was on the legal
Okay.
side of the organization.
Mm-hmm.
On the legal, I tell you, as a cybersecurity guys, life is much easier on the legal side because you just write policies and you talk to people, and you don't get calls at 2 a.m. saying you have a virus, because it's the IT guys that have to deal with that, guys and gals. But I effectively had little to no budget when I was on the legal side, because there was a dotted line to IT director of security, director of technology security. In this case, he had a big budget to pay for firewalls and penetration testers and whatever the technology. So kind of that point, the technology is the big part of the spend in cybersecurity. Absolutely.
Am I right in assuming that for many organizations, the belief is that this is not going to happen to us because we're small or we're not important or whatever, and the vast majority of organizations implement something after the fact, because then it becomes very apparent, like a burglar alarm. Nobody ever has a burglar alarm fitted until they've been burgled. And is it a similar kind of situation here?
It used to be, and Adam, I do see a shift in the fact that, again, small businesses, if you're selling to somebody, the third-party risk concept, if you're selling to someone, the buyers are getting more and more diligent of verifying that you are secure before they do business with you. So again, no matter who you're selling to, unless it's maybe the individual consumer, most businesses, before they sign contracts, are going to have some kind of validation. Do you have cyber insurance? If nothing else, they'll make sure you have the insurance in place. Many buyers in the U.S. have regulations, again, medical, financial, military, government, all those big players, they've got requirements to verify you're secure. So these contracts and the procurement processes, Adam, are really driving clarity to these smaller businesses, saying, hey, my buyers are expecting me to have multi-factor. My buyers are expecting me to have cyber insurance. My buyers are expecting this and this and this. So that's a good thing, because it's driving these small businesses to think about the things that typically they wouldn't think about, because we all understand small businesses only have so much money to spend. If you don't have to spend money in a space, why would you? Now we're getting clarity and we're getting drive, and they really have to sell their products.
Terry, I had a question, Rob, if that's okay, about AI. How AI is playing into stuff nowadays. So has that increased the cybersecurity risk? Has it changed it in terms of how people experience it? I know everybody hears about things like deep fakes, and how is AI playing in this playground?
It's playing roughly right now. There's really two parts maybe to think about it. AI as a tool being used by the bad guys, and then AI being used internally in business. So I'll do the first part. I'll start with that. So the bad guys are using AI because, again, these are capitalists. These are business men and women trying to make money off us. It's just a new tool in their toolbox. So yeah, the social engineering sorts of attacks, which can be emails, it can be voicemails. There's even a famous story, I think it was early this year, there was a Chinese company, I believe, that where they inappropriately paid like a multi-million-dollar invoice. And the way the bad guys pulled it off is they sent effectively a Zoom link to someone in finance saying, hey, this is the president of the company, you need to jump on the Zoom call. The person in accounting jumped on the call. It was a video call. It had the CEO and the CFO, and they were having a conversation. And the conversation was around the payment. And then the accounting guy heard what he needed to hear. He dropped off, paid the invoice. The whole video was faked. It was a deep fake conversation where they faked the video and the audio. The accountant was convinced it was legit, paid the invoice based on the interaction of the video. So the social engineering, the hard part we have really, Tracy, is that you need to authenticate people. And in the old days, you would authenticate people by seeing face to face. Well, I know who Rob is. I shake his hand, and he's a good guy, and I know that. Then it became phone calls, then it became signatures, then it became email, and now it's video. a lot of that all can be faked with artificial intelligence. And that's the big risk, that you need to go through your processes as a business and say, hey, we do not pay invoices unless whatever. Video calls no longer are reasonable proof that the invoice is legitimate. You should already have a rule in your organization saying email is no longer adequate for us to change bank routing information, because the bad guy's been doing that for 10 years. So they're using AI to make this social engineering much more effective. And they're going to get to the point pretty soon where, in addition, the messaging is going to get better. So if you think of all the information in the world about Tracy, Tracy has young kids, Tracy loves Lego, whatever it may be, they'll be able to pull all this stuff and have a great message just for Tracy. Hey, Tracy, your kid just used your credit card to order a Lego link. Click here to cancel the order. Well, that seems pretty legitimate. So the bad guys are using AI in that space, and they're going to get better and better. So as a business owner, your protection is to look at your processes. We don't accept this. We don't accept. You got to start building processes and training people not to accept those sorts of communications anymore. On the other half, business side, business is using AI. It's an excellent tool, does some neat things, but businesses are getting in trouble because they don't really understand AI, and AI is finding a lot of risks that maybe businesses weren't aware of. A real common problem is businesses are turning on Microsoft Copilot, which is kind of AI embedded into the 365 suite. They're turning on Microsoft Copilot and they're asking Copilot questions. Copilot then says, okay, Tracy's got a question. It skims through everything Tracy has and tries to respond. Unfortunately, unbeknownst to everybody, Tracy has access to some confidential information. So Copilot spits out a response that has this confidential information. So businesses are seeing that AI and Copilot in particular are finding things it shouldn't be finding. So businesses are going to have a period of adjustment in there, because again, AI is great. It's doing some whiz bang stuff, but as a business, it's got some special protections and considerations.
So Terry, how much of this is also, I mean, you said earlier on about the people, process, and the technology. How much of this is about education, like not clicking on links? I know Adam doesn't like puns, but he does like irony. I was sent an email from a cybersecurity company that basically had a brochure, and it said all you have to do is click on this link. And I have my own podcast, and I've interviewed cybersecurity people, and they say never ever click on links. It doesn't matter who it's from. You never click on links. So how much do you think this is down to education?
Oh, it's certainly a lot of it's about education, whether it's clicking on links or attachments or accepting a Zoom call as a proof that you should be paying an invoice. You should be educating people. The bad news is people are never going to be 100%. They're never going to be 100%. So you want to drive people education up. Really, the goal of training people should be, one, to make them cynical. Should I click on a link? I don't really know. Number two is to raise the red flag. Best case is you're building a culture in your business where someone says, boy, that's an odd email. I don't know about that. I'm going to send it to Terry. I'm not sure about things. So it's that cynicism and just kind of that, in the US, you'd say maybe your spidey sense, your Spider-Man senses are tingling, saying, this looks a little odd, stopping and putting on the brakes. So absolutely. And again, cost-wise, training people is not particularly expensive. It really isn't. You got to do it, and you got to build it, and you got to make sure it runs, but you're not spending 50 grand on training people. It's relatively inexpensive to train people. Realizing your objective is to get users up to the 95% awareness level, but it's certainly not a foolproof band, because all of us click on things, myself included.
Tim, I laughed when you shared that story because I still get emails from my bank and my credit card companies with links in them. And I'm thinking to myself, what are they thinking? That is so easy to replicate. A responsible bank would say, for your own protection, we don't link to your account here. You know how to find us. So that leads me to my question, Terry. What are the legal and compliance implications of inadequate cybersecurity? How responsible is my bank for a link I click on in an email that looks just like theirs?
Yeah, that's interesting. The legal liability contractual issues, even your cyber insurance. There's a case a few months ago where a company reached out to their cyber insurance company and said, hey, we had a phishing campaign. We mispaid something, $25,000. We want to submit this insurance claim. The insurance company looks through the company's application for cyber insurance. And in the application, they said that they do some special email filtering, which in fact they weren't doing. So the cyber insurance company says, hey, you said you're doing this, but you're not. We're not going to pay out this claim. So yeah, there's a lot of question of liability in the particular case that you talked about, Rob, where Terry receives an email that looks like Bank of America. They click on it. Bank of America really can't do anything about that. It's just, it's like in the old days, someone buying the Golden Gate Bridge. It's really not San Francisco's problem that someone bought the Golden Gate Bridge. But maybe think about it as an individual and as a small business. I'll tell you the one tip I tell everyone as an individual: make sure you have a password manager. So they're built into the computers these days. If not that, go get OnePass or LastPass. The password manager is an excellent tool for individuals because A, it makes sure you have good passwords. B, it makes sure your passwords are unique. You never want to use the same password at 2 different sites, because if the second site's hacked, the bad guys can get into site 1. So unique passwords. It also protects you from what they call farming. So if you click on a link that looks like Bank of America but isn't really Bank of America, your password manager will say, I'm not going to give this credentials to this fake Bank of America website. So again, tip for everyone at home: go get a password manager, make sure you use it.
And you talked about cyber insurance. What can people do about cyber insurance? Because again, it's like one of those things where you think, well, I'm a small business, I don't need to insure myself about it.
Well, all businesses should have cyber insurance, because just if nothing else, it's a business risk. Just like you've got, again, fire insurance, you've got slip and fall and E&O insurance. You have to have it these days. The costs are getting higher in the insurance space, but unfortunately, the costs are going up because incidents are going up. And frankly, it happens all the time. And even if you're the securest company in the world, if you have, Bob in accounting clicking on a bad link and he pays an invoice he shouldn't be paying, who's collecting that money? And that particular scenario, it's one of the top. FBI does a great job releasing reports. I think it's called ICS. They have an annual report on the top cyber incidents across the U.S. Email fraud is always up there, number 1 or 2. Point being, this does happen to small businesses all the time. So absolutely, you do need that. That frankly, your insurance provider should be talking to you about that all the time, but it's just a business risk. You have to deal with it.
And what about backups?
Oh, absolutely. So backups are kind of your last protection. So, if your email filtering lets the bad email through, and if we trained Bertrand not to click on a link, but he clicked anyway, and if our workstation's antivirus didn't work correctly, and our security alerts didn't detect it, and we got ransomware anywhere, if everything else fails and ransomware comes in, backup is your saving grace. So yeah, you must have backup, but I'll warn you, not all backups are equal. Do you back up everything, or do you only back up like 80%? Do your backups work correctly? Can you restore? Can you restore with dependencies? Because typically you're not restoring one piece. It fits in with other pieces. So do your pieces all work correctly? So absolutely, backup is critical, but equal critical is you got to make sure it works correctly. Just saying you have a backup isn't enough.
And surely phishing applications or whatever nowadays are clever enough to basically infect the backup, aren't they?
They do attack. So the malicious software that can come through phishing attacks. Once you get bad software in your network, then you're really in a trouble spot, because the bad guys can get there. The bad guys typically, once they're inside your network, they'll do a little bit of reconnaissance. So I'm inside your network. What do you have? You have a database, you have an email server, you have backups, whatever it may be. It'll start targeting and figure out what it wants to hit. Realizing, as we described here, that backups can help you recover as a business. The bad guys will try to get your backup system offline, because if you have backups, maybe you're less inclined to pay ransomware, to pay the ransom. If your backups work correctly, then you've got a business decision. Do I want to go to backups, or am I willing to pay the ransomware? So again, these are businessmen, businesswomen we're dealing with. They know how businesses respond, so they're going after the backups.
Yeah. And what about one of our clients, though we sold the company now, we're doing pen testing, so penetration testing on cybersecurity. First of all, what is pen testing, and do you recommend it's something that people do?
So what penetration testing is, you pay someone or a service to come in and act like a bad guy and try to get in. So there's different ways it can go. It can be big or small. There's automated ways to do it as well. But effectively, you're having someone pretend like they're attacking you, and then you get the rewards. Penetration testing is good, and it's of value, and frankly, may be required. Again, if you're signing a contract with a business, the business may say, question 14 may be, do you do an annual pen test? So you may be required to do a penetration test. But I'll tell you, penetration tests really may be step 2 or 3 along the process of what you call vulnerability management, looking for your issues and dealing with it. Pen testing is good, but I think most companies miss the earlier step of just simple vulnerability scanning. There's easy, inexpensive tools that'll just crawl your network and say, Bertrand's missing a patch, administrator has a blank password, you're using an unencrypted whatever. So there's very simple tools that do what's called vulnerability scanning. And that'll find 90% of what a penetration tester is going to find anyway. Much cheaper, much easier to resolve. So vulnerability testing before you get up to pen testing.
So how do businesses measure the effectiveness of their cybersecurity programs?
Well, that's hard because that's a risk. If your measurement is 0 cybersecurity incidents, you probably have the wrong measurement. Because frankly, cybersecurity incidents, and you got to ask yourself, what's the definition of an incident? You're going to have incidents. Incidents happen. Maybe Terry clicks on a link and your computer kicks into action, says, hey, I see a virus, and it stops it on Terry's computer. Everything's good. That would be an incident, but it's not a bad thing. We've got more training to do, but our technology worked fine. And on the other hand, you can have a really bad incident where ransomware comes through and just destroys your whole company. There's different ways to define an incident. Your metrics really shouldn't be that. Your metrics really, again, I go back to the idea of a framework and maybe KPI. So your framework is how well do we align with NIST cybersecurity framework structure. And within that, they even have things like maturity. So the framework may say, make sure you do user education. Okay, we know we have to do education, but what's education? Do we spend 5 minutes in onboarding Terry and tell him about not clicking things? Well, it's training, but maybe it's not mature training. Do we do quarterly testing? Do we verify all the testing's done? Do we have skills-based testing? So there even something as simple as training, there's good training and there's great training. Okay, so your metrics should be, we know where we want to go based on a framework, and we're maturing along the process. So those really are the right metrics, because again, incidents are going to happen. So you have framework alignment. Maybe a second thing to look at, Rob, would be your metrics. So you want to mature your program. Maybe your metrics are, how many clicks did we have? So this year we had 5 bad clicks. That means we need to improve our cybersecurity training. This year we had, viruses come through. We had 0 viruses. KPI is great. Maybe we don't need to focus on that at 2025. So I like metrics for helping you focus on the hotspots. So decide what your key metrics are, 5, 6, 7 of them. And then again, pick a framework, which is really your structure, and keep working and maturing through those frameworks.
All right, now, Terry, bring out your crystal ball. What are we looking at for the next 5 years in terms of preparing against cybersecurity attacks?
Boy, I forgot to bring my crystal ball today, along with my Christmas sweater. So we'll see what we can do. Looking forward, I don't want to focus so much on the technology. I think about more along the business view of cybersecurity, because again, we're talking about business risks. So as businesses move forward, more and more consolidation. If you're a company A and buying company B, you're inheriting all of the cybersecurity risks of company B. So, think about the business trends, consolidation. As Tracy said, there's a lot of more integration between the companies. and that's impacting us on a business perspective. Because if you rely on company B to do your, I don't know, your accounts payable or your payroll or whatever, if these companies go offline, that impacts you, even though you have no control over their cybersecurity. So those dependencies are becoming more and more of an issue. You know, in the next 5 years, our business is going to offshore more. Are they going to start onshoring again? That's going to impact cybersecurity. There is going to be a lot of focus on artificial intelligence over the 5 years, undoubtedly, and businesses are going to focus on that. So in the AI space, we know the bad guys are using it, but even as a business tool, things like, is an AI done securely and appropriately within the business? So actually, I talk about the cybersecurity framework for NIST. NIST actually has an AI framework as well. They only have like 3 or 4 big frameworks. They have an artificial intelligence risk framework. And I did work through that with a company. And in the AI space, you know, bias and transparency, and can we validate what it's producing? Can we protect the data? So the cybersecurity around the AI solutions are certainly going to be focused over the next several years. And maybe the last thing I'd say is these social engineering attacks are going to get better and better and better. So me pretending to be your bank, me pretending to be your kid, your grandma, whatever it may be, these attacks over multiple channels. Actually, I know someone, a young woman, who was convinced to send money because someone got in their Slack channel at work. Someone hacked into her friend's Slack account, got into Slack, and then in there said, "Hey, I've got a problem. Can you send me $200?" So the ability to pretend to be someone else is going to be much more risky, because AI is going to do a very good job at that over the next several years. So again, the protection of that, business owners, set your processes in place. We don't change bake routing information based on email. We don't change the information based on phone calls, on Zoom calls, on text messages, whatever it may be.
So
on that, sorry, Tim.
No, go ahead.
So what I would now call the mission impossible risk, so the deep fake one. You said the answer to that is processes, and maybe it's just because I'm French, but how much flexibility are we going to lose? Because that's sometimes the how do you say the counterbalance of a process.
Well, yeah, because at the end of the day, again, humans are fallible. Humans are social. We want to trust people. So and that's exactly what social engineering is designed to do, is to play off the way people interact with each other. Just like frauds have been happening for hundreds of years. You know, you interact, you trust people. But again, everything can be fake these days. The communications, the videos, the audio. Again, we talked about Tracy, the example of Legos and her young kids. All this information is out there. She really can't trust anything. So you train people to detect these issues. But at the end of the day, if your business process says the only way we accept changes to bank routing information is blank, whatever it may be. Maybe it's an email, and maybe the company calls a known person and validates that. So yeah, these deep fakes are going to get better and better, and there's no stopping it.
Terry, I just wanted to quickly ask on that, because my brain is saying this is the point of two-factor authentication, right? Is that I do this, and then it's like, and you also need to do this in order to prove that you are who you are. And so there's a lot of fairly quick processes that are possible in order to do this, right? Like if you have someone's text number, phone number, you can call them. So like, hey, I saw you on this video chat, but we have this rule that you have to two-factor authenticate any payment, anything. So like, I'm going to call you and confirm that that was you doing that. And I mean, like, at some point, I'm sure the fraudsters are going to get to the point where they've hacked multiple channels and then can do that too. Then we have three-factor authentication and all of these things. But like, I mean, I feel, just also to comment on Bertrand's question, is that if we're being intentional about these things, we probably don't have to spend too much time or lose too much flexibility on that. and maybe even kind of gain some flexibility because we have that knowledge of like, this is what we do. I don't have to spend my time worrying about what do I do because I know what I do. I 2-factor authenticate everything, and it takes 1 more minute, but like it's way more secure. And
Yeah,
I think from a business perspective, a lot of times we think we don't have 1 minute, but unless you're in the hospital saving babies, like you probably have a minute. So let's just take it.
Yeah, that goes back to the original statement of secure enough. You know, if you were a bank and you were doing a $100 million transaction, I'm guessing there's a whole lot of processes in place to make sure that's a legitimate transaction. If you're a small business owner and it's a $200 Venmo payment, maybe you care, maybe you don't. So you got to think through those thresholds. To your point, Tracy, you don't want to stop business. You could be Fort Knox and you could triple authenticate everything, and you could drive to their house and look at them and shake them and making sure they're a real person before you make a change. That's, you know, nothing wrong with that per se, but it's not the right way to run your business. So yeah, think about those risks. And don't forget, there's a lot of smart people out there to help you. So your bank can help you with conversations like this, your cyber insurance company, your IT service provider, their cybersecurity folks, there's people like me to help you think through and figure out what the logical, the right level of security is for you.
Well, you say that, but when Rob said about he got an email from his bank with a link on it, oddly, this morning I had an email from my bank as well, and it had 9 links on it. Now, some of those links were contact us, or whatever. Some of those links, so none of them were links that were necessarily not legitimate, and not all of them were links to the bank. So some of them were links to their social properties. Some of them were links to the contact us page. But I guess that the point is that, and Rob's point, that they should be an exemplar of good behavior here. They're sending an email to you that says, you need to be careful that you don't click any links. Read how you don't click links by clicking this link is kind of, is madness, isn't it?
It is, but it's not, frankly, not the bank's job to make sure you don't click on links. The bank's a business like anyone else. They've accepted the risk of sending you links because they know you have to multiple factor authenticate before you can get to account, so their stuff is safe. And from business.
Yeah, but my point was, so I create a Bank of America website that looks just like a Bank of America website and actually reads bankofamerica.com at the top, but the bank has the different A in it and stuff like that. So it's a completely cloned site, and I land on it and it says you need to log in. Yep. So instantly I'm going to give them my username and password. Now, yes, I need a 2-step authentication. We're going to send a text to your phone, but at that point they've already got my username and password. So who knows what that might open up, and it reduces one of those. So it then effectively becomes 1-factor authentication for them to get through to the next stage. And I just think that it's becoming, particularly with the advent of AI and the ability to be able to process lots of these simple transactions and randomized thinking for password checking and stuff like that, we do need to become incredibly cynical, don't we? We do need to be extremely careful about how we interact with the things that are sent to us, even if they claim to be legitimate.
We have to assume everything that's sent to us is wrong.
Yeah, and you know, I remember it's not that many years ago that we had the "I love you" virus, and you know,
about 20 years ago, Adam.
Yeah, but for me, that's
before Tracy was born.
Yeah, but the point is, you know, a friend of yours sends you something that says, "I love you. Here's a little message just to show how much you mean to me," and it's come from you, so of course I'm going to believe it.
I was at Oracle Corporation when that came out, and it took the whole of the email of Oracle Corporation's email down, and I probably wasn't supposed to tell you that. So it's our secret, all right?
We all knew it. Great.
The statute of limitations is passed on that one, I think. I think it's interesting though, because like I used to work in automated voice notifications, and we did a lot of work in claim status updates, bank notifications, like when your account has been flagged for fraud. And one of the things that we would always say is that this is a notification notifying you of this, but we will never call you and ask for account information. Okay? So like if someone calls you and asks for account information, don't do that. But it was interesting even to think about it now, is that like we did that on the calls because we thought it was really important, but I don't know how well the user was informed of that in other channels outside of the call. So if like this is the first call you've gotten, then we've told you. But if it's not the first call you've gotten, then you might not know that. So it is interesting, I think. And like you said all along, Terry, it's a balance, right? Like what, as a business, there's the security part, but there's also the customer service part. Like, how do we service our customers? How do we take care of our customers? We know these types of things are happening in the market. Are we going to take the onus of that to help our customers, or are we not? It's a business decision.
Agreed.
Terry, this has been great.
Thank you.
How can people learn more? How can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, thank you, Rob. It's been a pleasure talking with the panel. I work with a company called Tech CXO, and we're a collection of fractional executives. So if you're interested in more information, reach out to me at Tech CXO, and just look on the cybersecurity page.
Fantastic.
Excellent.
We now have a newsletter. Don't miss an episode. Get show highlights, beyond the show insights, and reminders of upcoming episodes. You can scan the QR code on screen or visit us at digitaldownload.live/newsletter. This is our last broadcast of the year. We are going into the holidays and taking a short hiatus. To everyone that has been an active participant in today's show and this whole season, I want to take a moment to thank everyone for being an active part of the digital download, and we'll see you next year.
Happy
Thanks,
New Year,
Al.
everyone.
Thanks, Terry.
Thanks,
That's
Terry.